The massive alien fleet moved through space like a pack of hunting wolves, their crystalline ships gleaming under the distant light of Sol. Admiral Crixvel stood on the bridge of his flagship, all four of his arms crossed behind his back as he watched the blue planet grow larger on the main screen. Earth looked so small and helpless from this distance. Just another world that would soon bow before the might of the Galactic Dominion. 200 ships formed his armada, each one a masterpiece of Zephyrian engineering that had crushed countless civilizations across the galaxy. The Admiral's purple skin rippled with satisfaction as he remembered the last planet they had conquered just 3 months ago. The Corvini had lasted exactly 2 hours and 17 minutes before their leaders begged for mercy through subspace communications. Sub-Commander? Yeath Cole approached with data tablets clutched in his 6-fingered hands. His voice carried the usual mixture of respect and fear that all subordinates showed when addressing the Admiral. The readings from their long-range sensors painted a picture of a primitive world that still used chemical rockets and basic fusion reactors. These humans seemed even more backward than the Corvani had been. The Admiral's eyes, large and black like polished stones, studied the tactical displays with growing amusement. Human technology appeared to be stuck in what the Galactic Dominion classified as the third developmental stage. Their most advanced weapons were simple plasma cannons that could barely penetrate basic energy shields. Their ships moved slowly through space using crude ion drives that would have been laughable even to species the Dominion had conquered centuries ago. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the command chair of the USS Liberty, his weathered face showing no emotion as he read the alien transmission for the 5th time. The message had arrived just 30 minutes ago, broadcast across every communication frequency that humans used. The translation software had worked quickly to convert the alien language into something his crew could understand. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Dominion and claimed to represent 47 different species that had all submitted to their rule. Their demands were simple enough to understand even without the translation matrix. Humanity had exactly 72 hours to surrender unconditionally or face complete destruction. There would be no negotiations and no second chances. Lieutenant Amy Brooks worked at her station with steady hands despite the enormous pressure they all felt. Her screens showed the alien fleet maintaining a loose formation just outside the orbit of Mars. The enemy ships were beautiful in their own way, looking more like floating works of art than instruments of war. Each vessel seemed to be carved from a single piece of crystal that caught and reflected light in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. The tactical computer had been running analysis programs for the past hour, trying to understand how the alien ships functioned. The results were troubling at best. These vessels appeared to use some form of quantum field manipulation for both propulsion and defense. Their weapons fired concentrated plasma beams that could reach temperatures hot enough to vaporize most known materials. Captain Morrison had served in 3 different wars during his 20-year career in the Earth Defense Force. He had seen ships torn apart by missile strikes and watched good soldiers die in the cold vacuum of space, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for an enemy that commanded technology this far beyond human understanding. The communications officer, Lieutenant Tim Rodriguez, kept his voice steady as he reported incoming data from Earth Command. Admiral Jack Harrison was coordinating the defense from Luna Base, while scientists around the world worked frantically to understand what they were facing. Every telescope and sensor array in the solar system had been turned toward the alien fleet. Chief Engineer Lisa Parker moved between control stations like a dancer, her hands flying over keyboards as she ran diagnostics on every system aboard the USS Liberty. The ship was humanity's newest and most powerful warship, representing 50 years of technological advancement since the first human colonies had been established on Mars and Europa. The Liberty measured 2.5 kilometers from bow to stern, making it the largest vessel ever built by human hands. Its hull was made from a titanium steel composite that could withstand direct meteor impacts. Multiple fusion reactors provided enough power to supply a small city, while advanced AI systems helped coordinate the hundreds of weapon systems built into the ship's frame. But even with all of humanity's best technology, Captain Morrison knew they were facing an enemy that considered them nothing more than primitive barbarians. The alien message had been clear about their intentions. The Galactic Dominion had come to add humanity to their collection of conquered species. and they expected no more resistance than they might face from any other pre-space civilization. Admiral Crixvell reviewed the intelligence reports from his scout ships with growing confidence. The humans had apparently developed fusion power and basic energy weapons, which put them slightly ahead of some species the Dominion had encountered. But their ships were still confined to their own solar system, and their largest vessel was laughably small compared to even the smallest Cypherian escort cruiser, the Admiral's. Tactical staff had already drawn up battle plans that would minimize damage to human infrastructure. The Dominion preferred to keep conquered worlds intact so they could be put to productive use. These humans might prove useful as laborers or technicians once they accepted their new place in the galactic order. Dr. Karen Phillips worked in the medical bay of the USS Liberty, preparing for casualties that everyone knew were coming. She had served as a combat medic during the Mars Rebellion and understood what happened when superior firepower met inferior defenses. The alien weapons would likely cause injuries unlike anything human medicine had encountered before. The ship's crew of 800 men and women represented the best that humanity had to offer. They were volunteers all, chosen from thousands of applicants who wanted to serve aboard the most advanced vessel in the human fleet. Each person knew that they might be fighting humanity's last battle, but none of them showed any sign of backing down from the challenge. Captain Morrison stood and walked to the main view screen, staring out at the stars that had seemed so welcoming just a few days ago. Now those same stars hid an enemy fleet that could destroy everything humans had built over the past 5 centuries. The weight of responsibility felt heavier than the ship's artificial gravity, but he had accepted this burden when he took command of the Liberty. The alien admiral had given humanity 72 hours to surrender, but Captain Morrison suspected the attack would come much sooner than that. Species that commanded this level of technology probably did not waste time with extended negotiations. They would make their demands, wait for the inevitable rejection, and then proceed with the conquest they had planned from the beginning. Lieutenant Brooks reported that all weapon systems were online and ready for combat. The ship's AI had finished calculating firing solutions for every possible engagement scenario. Defensive screens were at maximum power, and all crew members had reported to their battle stations. Captain Morrison returned to his command chair and opened a ship-wide communication channel. His voice carried to every section of the vessel as he spoke words that would be remembered for as long as humanity survived. The crew listened in silence as their captain explained what they all already knew, but needed to hear spoken aloud. The fate of their entire species now rested in the hands of 800 human beings aboard one ship, facing an enemy that had never known defeat in 3 centuries of conquest across the galaxy. Admiral Crixvell activated the holographic communication array with a gesture from his primary left arm. The device hummed to life, creating a 3-dimensional image that would be broadcast across every human communication frequency simultaneously. He wanted every member of this primitive species to see exactly what they were dealing with when they chose to defy the Galactic Dominion. The Admiral's image appeared on television screens, computer monitors, and communication devices across Earth. His purple skin seemed to glow under the artificial lights of his command bridge, while his forearms moved in practiced gestures that had intimidated countless species before humanity. His large black eyes reflected no mercy as he began the speech that had preceded the conquest of 47 different worlds. Behind the Admiral, holographic displays showed images of other planets that had fallen to Dominion forces, burning cities, collapsed defense fleets, and crowds of defeated aliens kneeling before Zephyrian commanders played in an endless loop. Each image was designed to show humans exactly what happened to species that chose resistance over immediate surrender. The Admiral's voice carried across space, through quantum communication arrays that Earth scientists could barely understand. His words were translated by advanced computer systems that had learned thousands of different languages during the Dominion's expansion across the galaxy. The translation was perfect, ensuring that every human would understand the choice they were being offered. On Luna Base, Admiral Jack Harrison watched the alien broadcast with a mixture of fascination and growing anger. The enemy commander spoke about conquest as if it were a natural process like erosion or planetary formation. There was no hatred in his voice, just the calm certainty of someone who had never experienced defeat in battle. The Lunar Command Center buzzed with activity as staff officers coordinated defense preparations across the solar system. Earth's orbital defense platforms were coming online, their fusion reactors spinning up to full power for the first time since the Mars crisis 15 years ago. Ancient weapon systems that had been built to protect against asteroid impacts were being retargeted to engage alien spacecraft. Chief Communications Officer Patricia Cole worked at her station with intense focus, recording every detail of the alien transmission. The linguistic analysis computers were already breaking down the Zephyrian language structure, searching for patterns that might reveal information about their technology or intentions. Every word the Admiral spoke provided valuable intelligence about the enemy they faced. Admiral Harrison had commanded Luna Base for 8 years, ever since the establishment of the Outer System Defense Command. His job had always been to prepare for theoretical threats from space, whether they came in the form of rogue asteroids or hostile alien contact. Now that theoretical threat had become terrifyingly real, and he found himself responsible for coordinating humanity's response. The alien admiral continued his broadcast, describing in detail how each conquered species had initially resisted before accepting the inevitable reality of Dominion superiority. His words painted a picture of civilizations that had fought bravely, but ultimately learned to appreciate the benefits of membership in a galactic empire that brought peace and order to chaotic star systems. Captain Morrison listened to the broadcast from his position on the bridge of the USS Liberty. The alien commander spoke about humanity as if they were children who simply needed to be educated about their place in the universe. There was no recognition that humans might have their own reasons for preferring independence over submission to foreign rule. Lieutenant Amy Brooks studied the tactical data that accompanied the alien transmission. The enemy ships had moved into a loose formation that suggested they expected minimal resistance. Their deployment patterns indicated confidence that bordered on arrogance, as if they were preparing for a training exercise rather than actual combat against a determined enemy. The Zephyrian admiral gestured toward images of prosperous alien cities where conquered species lived under Dominion rule. His presentation showed hospitals, schools, and industrial facilities that had been built after planetary conquest. The message was clear enough that even primitive humans could understand it. Resistance would bring only death and destruction, while surrender would lead to a better life under enlightened alien guidance. Dr. Sandra Hayes worked in the xenobiology laboratory deep within Luna Base, analyzing every frame of the alien broadcast for clues about Zephyrian physiology and psychology. The Admiral's four-armed body structure suggested high-gravity evolution, while his large eyes indicated a species that had developed under dim stellar conditions. Understanding the enemy's biology might provide insights into their weaknesses. The broadcast continued with recorded testimonials from leaders of conquered species, each one explaining how their initial fears had proven unfounded after accepting Dominion membership. These aliens spoke about technological advancement, medical breakthroughs, and expanded opportunities for trade and exploration that came with joining the galactic community. Admiral Harrison knew propaganda when he heard it, but he also recognized that some of these claims might be true. The Galactic Dominion clearly possessed technology that could benefit humanity in countless ways. But the price they demanded was the surrender of human independence and self-determination, something that no military officer could accept without a fight. Lieutenant Rodriguez monitored communication frequencies across Earth as the alien message reached every corner of the planet. Government leaders were already meeting in emergency sessions while military commanders activated defense protocols that had been prepared for this exact scenario. The reaction was predictably mixed, with some calling for immediate surrender, while others demanded resistance, regardless of the cost. The Zephyrian admiral concluded his presentation with a final display of military power designed to discourage any thoughts of resistance. His fleet moved into attack formation, their crystalline hulls catching starlight as they demonstrated the precise coordination that had defeated every enemy they had ever faced. Each ship was a work of art that could deliver destruction on a planetary scale. Captain Morrison opened a secure communication channel to Luna Base, his voice carrying the calm professionalism that had earned him command of humanity's most advanced warship. Admiral Harrison responded immediately, confirming that Earth Command had analyzed the alien ultimatum and reached a unanimous decision. Humanity would not surrender without a fight, regardless of the apparent technological superiority of their enemies. Chief Engineer Lisa Parker received authorization to begin final preparations for combat operations. The USS Liberty's fusion reactors were already operating at optimal levels, but she initiated startup sequences for backup systems that would be needed during extended battle conditions. Every circuit and power coupling had been tested repeatedly, ensuring that the ship would perform at maximum efficiency when the fighting began. The alien, Admiral's image faded from screens across Earth as his broadcast ended with a final warning about the consequences of choosing resistance over wisdom. His fleet maintained its position beyond Mars' orbit, waiting for the human response that they expected would follow historical patterns established by 47 previous conquests. Admiral Harrison contacted government leaders around the world, confirming that Earth's military forces were as ready as they could be given the circumstances. The orbital defense platforms were fully operational, while ground-based installations prepared to support the fleet action that would determine humanity's future. Every nation had contributed personnel and resources to the unified defense effort. Dr. Hayes published her preliminary analysis of Zephyrian biology across the military communication network. Her findings suggested that the aliens had evolved under conditions significantly different from Earth, which might affect their performance in combat situations that required rapid adaptation to changing circumstances. The information was limited, but it provided hope that human tactics might prove effective against apparently superior technology. The crew of the USS Liberty completed final equipment checks as they prepared for a battle that would either establish humanity as a power to be respected in the galaxy or result in the complete destruction of human civilization. Captain Morrison walked through the ship's corridors, speaking with crew members who represented the best that Earth had produced during 5 centuries of technological advancement. Lieutenant Brooks reported that alien scout ships were conducting detailed scans of Earth's defensive positions. The enemy clearly intended to gather as much intelligence as possible before beginning their attack. Their behavior followed standard military doctrine for a superior force engaging primitive opponents, suggesting that they expected the coming battle to follow predictable patterns based on previous conquests. The countdown had begun toward what might be the most important 72 hours in human history, as two species prepared for a conflict that would determine whether Earth would remain free or join the growing list of worlds that served the Galactic Dominion under alien rule. Sub-Commander Yeath Cole presented his intelligence report to Admiral Crixvell with the confident efficiency that had made him one of the most trusted officers in the Zephyrian fleet. The data tablets contained detailed analysis from 3 different scout ships that had spent the past 18 hours studying human defensive positions throughout the solar system. The findings painted a picture of a species that had barely progressed beyond the primitive stages of spacefaring technology. Human vessels appeared to rely on chemical propulsion systems augmented by basic ion drives that would have been considered obsolete by galactic standards for over 500 years. Their largest warship measured only 2.5 kilometers in length, making it smaller than even the escort cruisers that protected Dominion supply convoys. Admiral Crixvell studied the tactical displays with growing amusement as his intelligence staff explained what they had discovered about human military capabilities. Earth's orbital defense platforms mounted fusion-powered plasma cannons that could theoretically damage Zephyrian hulls, but their targeting systems appeared to be completely dependent on primitive electromagnetic sensors that could easily be jammed or confused. The human defense fleet consisted of approximately 40 vessels, scattered throughout their solar system, with most of them concentrated around Earth and its moon. These ships varied greatly in size and apparent function, suggesting that humanity had not yet developed standardized military construction techniques. Their largest concentration of firepower appeared to be focused on protecting their homeworld rather than establishing defensive perimeters at strategic locations. Chief Science Officer Vex Neela reported that human weapons technology seemed to focus primarily on kinetic projectiles and basic energy beams. Their most advanced systems appeared to be fusion-powered plasma cannons, similar to what the Corvani had used during their brief resistance 3 months ago. There was no evidence that humans had developed quantum shielding, gravitational manipulation, or any of the other technologies that marked a truly advanced civilization. The scout ships had also detected what appeared to be primitive artificial intelligence systems aboard human vessels, but these computers seemed to be limited to basic navigation and communication functions. There was no indication that humanity had achieved the level of AI integration that allowed Dominion ships to function with crews 1/10 the size needed by less advanced species. Admiral Krigvel's tactical staff had already completed preliminary battle plans based on the intelligence they had gathered. The human defense fleet could be neutralized within the first hour of combat, while Earth's orbital installations would require perhaps another 30 minutes to destroy completely. The entire operation would likely conclude before most humans even understood what was happening to them. Captain Morrison stood in the tactical briefing room aboard the USS Liberty, studying holographic displays that showed the alien fleet's current position and estimated capabilities. His senior officers had spent the past 12 hours analyzing every piece of data they could gather about their enemies. But the results were far from encouraging. Lieutenant Amy Brooks presented her tactical analysis with a calm professionalism that had earned her the position of Chief Tactical Officer aboard humanity's most advanced warship. The alien vessels appeared to use some form of exotic matter manipulation for both propulsion and defensive systems. Their hulls seemed to be constructed from crystalline materials that could absorb and redirect enormous amounts of energy. The enemy fleet maintained a loose formation that suggested supreme confidence in their ability to handle any resistance humanity might offer. Their ships moved through space with a grace that indicated complete mastery of gravitational forces, while their weapon systems appeared to be capable of focusing plasma streams across distances that would challenge even the most advanced human targeting computers. Chief Engineer Lisa Parker reported that the USS Liberty's systems were operating at peak efficiency, but she could not hide her concern about the technological gap they faced. The ship's fusion reactors could generate enormous amounts of power, but human energy weapons were still limited by the fundamental physics of plasma containment and beam coherence over interplanetary distances. Admiral Jack Harrison received updated intelligence reports from observation posts throughout the solar system every 15 minutes. The alien fleet had made no aggressive moves since delivering their ultimatum, but their scout ships continued to gather detailed information about human defensive positions. The enemy clearly intended to minimize their own casualties by understanding every aspect of humanity's military capabilities. Before beginning their attack, Dr. Sandra Hayes worked frantically in her xenobiology laboratory, trying to extract useful information from the limited data available about Zephyrian physiology and psychology. The aliens appeared to be supremely confident in their technological superiority, which might create opportunities for tactics that relied on surprise rather than brute force. Human military doctrine had always emphasized adaptability and innovation when facing superior enemies. The Galactic Dominion had apparently conquered 47 different species over the past 3 centuries, suggesting that their military tactics were both proven and refined through extensive combat experience. However, this same experience might also make them predictable to opponents who understood how to exploit the psychological weaknesses that came with prolonged success. Subcommander Yith Cole coordinated the final reconnaissance missions that would provide Admiral Krixvel with complete intelligence about human defensive capabilities. The scout ships had identified every significant military installation in the solar system, from the massive defense platforms orbiting Earth to the smaller patrol vessels stationed near the outer planets. The humans appeared to have concentrated most of their defensive firepower around their homeworld, which followed standard patterns established by every other primitive species the Dominion had encountered. This defensive posture made tactical sense for protecting population centers, but it left their outer system installations vulnerable to systematic destruction that would isolate Earth before the final assault began. Captain Morrison received authorization from Earth Command to begin combat preparations aboard the USS Liberty. The ship's crew of 800 men and women represented the elite of human military service, but even their extensive training could not completely overcome the technological disadvantages they faced against an enemy with centuries more experience in space warfare. Lieutenant Tim Rodriguez established secure communication links with every human military installation in the solar system, creating a coordination network that would allow Admiral Harrison to direct the defense from Luna Base. The communication system used quantum encryption techniques that human scientists had developed only within the past 5 years. But they had no way of knowing whether their security measures could resist alien code-breaking technology. The alien fleet had positioned itself just beyond Mars' orbit, close enough to demonstrate their overwhelming firepower, but far enough away to avoid any surprise attacks that human forces might attempt. Their formation showed careful attention to mutual support and defensive coverage, indicating that they took at least some precautions despite their apparent confidence in technological superiority. Dr. Karen Phillips supervised final preparations in the medical facilities aboard the USS Liberty, knowing that the casualties from this battle would likely overwhelm every hospital ship in the human fleet. The alien weapons appeared to cause injuries unlike anything human medicine had encountered before, requiring completely new treatment protocols that would have to be developed during actual combat conditions. Admiral Crixvell reviewed the final intelligence summary with satisfaction, noting that human military capabilities fell within expected parameters for a species at their level of technological development. The coming battle would provide valuable training opportunities for younger officers while adding another conquest to the Dominion's growing list of successful planetary acquisitions. The Zephyrian commander activated his fleet's communication systems, preparing to broadcast the final ultimatum that would give humanity one last opportunity to surrender before the destruction began. His message would be transmitted across every human frequency simultaneously, ensuring that even the most remote installations would understand that their time for resistance had nearly expired. Chief Science Officer Vex Neela reported that all scout ships had returned to the main fleet with complete tactical intelligence about human defensive positions. The data would be distributed to every ship captain within the hour, allowing the entire Armada to coordinate their attack with the precision that had made the Galactic Dominion the dominant power in this region of the galaxy. The countdown toward humanity's final decision had begun, as both species prepared for a conflict that one side expected to conclude within hours, while the other prepared to fight for their survival, regardless of the apparent odds against them. The USS Liberty emerged from behind Earth's moon like a predator stepping from the shadows, its massive hull reflecting the cold light of distant stars as it moved into open space. Admiral Crixvell watched the human vessel appear on his tactical displays with the same mild interest he might show for an insect crawling across his desk. The alien commander's tactical computer immediately began analyzing the human ship's specifications, comparing its apparent capabilities to the database of vessels encountered during previous conquests. The results were predictably unimpressive to Zephyrian standards. The Liberty measured approximately 2.5 kilometers in length, making it roughly 1/3 the size of the smallest cruiser in the Dominion fleet. Sub-Commander Yithkol reported that the human vessel appeared to be constructed using primitive titanium steel, alloys reinforced with what looked like carbon fiber composites. The ship's hull showed evidence of modular construction techniques that suggested humanity had not yet mastered the molecular engineering technologies that allowed truly advanced civilizations to build vessels from single pieces of programmable matter. The Liberty's propulsion signature indicated fusion-powered ion drives supplemented by what appeared to be experimental gravity manipulation systems. Admiral Crixvell found this combination amusing, since gravity control was typically one of the last technologies that primitive species attempted to develop before achieving true spacefaring status. The humans were apparently trying to skip several developmental stages without understanding the fundamental principles involved. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, watching as his crew prepared for what they all knew would be the most important battle in human history. Lieutenant Amy Brooks worked at her tactical station with calm efficiency, bringing the Liberty's weapon systems online according to protocols that had been developed specifically for this type of engagement. The ship's external armor plating began to retract along predetermined lines, revealing weapon ports that had been concealed during the vessel's approach. Admiral Crixvell watched this process with growing amusement, noting that the humans apparently believed surprise was still possible despite the fact that his scout ships had been monitoring their activities for the past 24 hours. Chief Engineer Lisa Parker initiated startup sequences for the Liberty's primary weapon. Systems from her position in the engineering section Fusion reactors that had been operating at minimal power suddenly surged to full capacity, channeling enormous amounts of energy through conduits that ran the entire length of the ship's hull. The power levels registered on Zephyrian sensors, but the readings seemed too low to represent any significant threat. The first weapon ports to open revealed what appeared to be enlarged versions of the plasma cannons that human ships typically carried. Admiral Crixvel's weapons specialist reported that these guns were approximately 40% larger than standard human armaments, suggesting that the Liberty had been designed specifically for ship-to-ship combat rather than planetary bombardment or patrol. Duty's additional armor sections retracted to expose what looked like missile launch tubes. Though the Zephyrian sensors could not immediately determine what type of projectiles the human ship carried, missile technology was considered primitive by galactic standards, since most advanced species had developed energy weapons that could strike targets instantly across interplanetary distances without requiring physical projectiles that could be intercepted or jammed. Lieutenant Rodriguez coordinated communication between the Liberty and Admiral Harrison's command center on Luna Base, ensuring that Earth's defense forces would be able to coordinate their response when the battle began. The communication system used quantum entanglement protocols that human scientists had developed only recently, but they represented a significant advancement in military coordination technology. The Liberty's hull continued to transform as additional weapon systems were revealed. Railgun turrets emerged from concealed positions along the ship's flanks, their magnetic acceleration coils glowing with barely contained energy. Admiral Crixvel found these weapons particularly amusing, since kinetic projectiles were typically the first type of space-based weapons that primitive species developed before learning to harness more sophisticated energy-based technologies. Dr. Karen Phillips monitored the ship's medical facilities from her position in the primary sickbay, watching as automated systems prepared for the casualties that everyone expected would result from engaging such a technologically superior enemy. The Liberty's medical technology represented the best that human science could offer. But treating injuries caused by exotic alien weapons would require improvisation and adaptation under combat conditions. The most surprising revelation came when the Liberty's final armor sections retracted to expose weapon systems that the Zephyrian sensors could not immediately identify. These installations appeared to incorporate technologies that did not match the typical progression of weapons development that most species followed. Admiral Crixvel ordered his science officers to conduct more detailed scans to determine what the humans had actually built. Chief Science Officer Vex Nyla reported readings that seemed inconsistent with human technological capabilities as demonstrated by their other vessels. The unknown weapon systems appeared to generate energy fields that resembled those produced by much more advanced civilizations, but the power requirements should have been beyond what human fusion reactors could provide. Captain Morrison received final authorization from Earth Command to engage the alien fleet according to his own tactical judgment. Admiral Harrison's message was brief but clear. The USS Liberty represented humanity's best chance to demonstrate that Earth would not surrender without a fight, regardless of the apparent odds against them. The Liberty began moving toward the alien fleet with acceleration that surprised the Zephyrian observers. The human ship's gravity manipulation systems appeared to be more sophisticated than initial scans had suggested, allowing the vessel to change course and speed in ways that violated traditional physics as understood by less advanced species. Lieutenant Brooks initiated targeting protocols for the ship's primary weapons, using sensor data that had been collected during the past 18 hours of observation. The Liberty's AI systems calculated firing solutions for every enemy vessel simultaneously, preparing to engage multiple targets with the kind of coordination that typically required fleet-level communication networks. Admiral Crixvel watched the approaching human vessel with the detached interest of a scientist observing an interesting but ultimately harmless specimen. The Liberty's approach vector suggested that its captain intended to engage the entire Zephyrian fleet single-handedly, which demonstrated either incredible courage or complete insanity. The alien commander decided to allow the human ship to approach within weapons range before destroying it, since the engagement would provide valuable combat data about human military capabilities. His tactical staff prepared to record every detail of the battle for analysis by Dominion military researchers who studied primitive species. Chief Engineer Parker made final adjustments to the Liberty's power distribution systems, ensuring that every weapon would receive maximum energy when Captain Morrison gave the order to fire. The ship's fusion reactors were operating at temperatures that would have been considered dangerous by most species, but human engineering had always emphasized performance over safety when survival was at stake. The Liberty continued its approach toward the alien fleet, its hull gleaming with the energy discharge from weapons that were unlike anything the Galactic Dominion had encountered in 3 centuries of conquest. Admiral Crixvell prepared to learn exactly what kind of resistance humanity could offer against the most powerful military force in the known. Galaxy Lieutenant Amy Brooks reported that all weapon systems were ready for combat operations, while targeting computers had achieved lock-on solutions for the first wave of enemy vessels. Captain Morrison stood at the center of his bridge, surrounded by the best crew that humanity could provide, preparing to begin a battle that would determine whether Earth remained free or joined the growing list of worlds that served under alien rule. Captain Morrison gave the order to fire with the calm voice of a man who had accepted that he might be about to die in the service of his species. Lieutenant Amy Brooks pressed the firing controls that would unleash humanity's answer to 3 centuries of alien conquest, and the USS Liberty transformed from a vessel of exploration into an instrument of war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ship's railgun arrays fired first, accelerating tungsten-cored projectiles to 15% of light speed using magnetic fields that required the combined output of 6 fusion reactors. Admiral Crixvell watched the approaching projectiles on his tactical display with mild curiosity, expecting his quantum shields to deflect the primitive kinetic weapons just as they had deflected every other attack the Dominion had faced. The first projectile struck the Zephyrian escort cruiser Bright Harmony with the force of a small asteroid impact, punching through quantum defenses that had never failed against any weapon in the galactic arsenal. The crystalline hull shattered like glass as relativistic tungsten core tore through the ship's interior, destroying fusion reactors and life support systems in the space of a single heartbeat. Subcommander Yithkol stared at his sensor readings in disbelief, watching as 3 escort cruisers simply ceased to exist in the opening seconds of combat. His tactical computer kept rejecting the data as impossible, unable to process the idea that kinetic weapons could generate impact forces equivalent to antimatter detonations. The Liberty's second salvo targeted the heavy cruiser Crystal Wind, sending a stream of projectiles that arrived at their target before the alien crew could even begin evasive maneuvers. The Zephyrian vessel attempted to reinforce its quantum shields, but the human weapons simply ignored defensive systems that had been designed to stop energy beams and conventional missiles. Admiral Crixvell felt something he had not experienced in over 2 centuries of military service: genuine surprise at an enemy's capabilities. His flagship's AI systems were recalculating threat assessments and recommending immediate retreat, but the Admiral's pride would not allow him to withdraw from a battle against a single primitive vessel. Chief Weapons Officer Tony Martinez reported direct hits on all primary targets as the Liberty's railguns continued their devastating barrage. The human weapons were firing projectiles at a rate that should have been impossible, given the power requirements for magnetic acceleration. But the ship's fusion reactors were apparently capable of generating far more energy than Zephyrian. Sensors had detected the alien fleet attempted to return fire with plasma cannons that had reduced countless enemy vessels to glowing vapor, but the Liberty's point defense systems intercepted incoming energy beams with precision that bordered on supernatural. Automated laser batteries tracked and destroyed plasma bolts before they could reach the ship's hull, creating a defensive screen that no previous enemy had been able to penetrate. Lieutenant Rodriguez coordinated targeting data with Admiral Harrison's command center, allowing Earth's orbital defense platforms to concentrate their fire on alien vessels that had been damaged by the Liberty's initial attack. The combined firepower of humanity's defenses was proving far more effective than any Zephyrian tactical computer had predicted. Dr. Sandra Hayes watched the battle from her laboratory on Luna Base, analyzing sensor data that revealed technologies she had not imagined humans possessed. The Liberty's weapons were operating on principles that seemed to violate known physics, generating kinetic forces that should have required antimatter reactors to power. The Zephyrian cruiser Stardancer attempted to ram the human vessel, its captain hoping to destroy the Liberty through direct collision since conventional weapons were proving ineffective. Captain Morrison ordered evasive maneuvers that demonstrated the true capabilities of human gravity manipulation technology. The Liberty moved through space like a dancer, changing direction and velocity without regard for the momentum conservation that constrained every other vessel in the galaxy. Chief Engineer Lisa Parker had activated experimental gravity control systems that allowed the ship to treat physics as a suggestion rather than an absolute law. Admiral Crixvell watched, his fleet being systematically destroyed by a single enemy vessel that should not have possessed the technology necessary to threaten even his smallest escort ships. The human weapons were unlike anything in the Galactic Dominion's extensive military database, combining kinetic energy with exotic physics in ways that made traditional defensive measures completely useless. The Liberty's missile systems activated for the first time, launching projectiles that appeared conventional until they reached their targets. Sub-Commander Yithkal detected antimatter signatures just before the warheads detonated, creating explosions that vaporized entire Zephyrian vessels and damaged others across distances measured in thousands of kilometers. Chief Science Officer Vex Neela reported readings that his instruments insisted were impossible. The human ship was using controlled antimatter as a tactical weapon, something that even the most advanced species in the galaxy considered too dangerous for anything except strategic bombardment of planets. These primitives were treating the most destructive force in the universe as standard ammunition. Captain Morrison ordered the deployment of drone swarms, revealing another technology that the Galactic Dominion had never encountered in centuries of conquest. Hundreds of small autonomous combat units poured from launch bays hidden throughout the Liberty's hull, each one carrying enough firepower to threaten a Zephyrian escort vessel. The drones moved with coordination that suggested a level of artificial intelligence far beyond what human technology should have been capable of producing. They attacked in formations that adapted instantly to changing battlefield conditions, using tactics that seemed to anticipate Zephyrian responses before the alien commanders could issue orders. Lieutenant Amy Brooks reported that enemy return fire was decreasing rapidly as more alien vessels were destroyed or disabled. The Zephyrian fleet's vaunted coordination was breaking down under assault from weapons and tactics that their tactical computers could not analyze or counter effectively. Admiral Crixvell found himself facing a situation that no Dominion commander had experienced in living memory: the possibility of defeat at the hands of a supposedly primitive enemy. His tactical staff was recommending immediate withdrawal to regroup and analyze human capabilities. But retreat would mean acknowledging that the Galactic Dominion had finally encountered a species it could not easily conquer. Dr. Karen Phillips monitored casualty reports from throughout the human fleet, amazed to discover that losses were far lighter than anyone had predicted. The Liberty's advanced defensive systems were protecting not only itself but providing cover for other human vessels that moved in to engage damaged alien ships. The battle that Admiral Crixvell had expected to conclude within minutes was extending into its first hour, with the Zephyrian fleet suffering losses that exceeded their total casualties from the previous decade of conquest. The humans were demonstrating military capabilities that challenged every assumption the Dominion had made about primitive species. Chief Engineer Parker reported that the Liberty's systems were operating within acceptable parameters, despite the enormous energy expenditure required for sustained combat operations. The ship had been designed to fight extended battles against multiple enemies, using technologies that human scientists had developed specifically for this type of engagement. The Zephyrian fleet began attempting to withdraw from the battle, but the Liberty's long-range sensors were tracking their quantum signatures across interstellar distances. Captain Morrison realized that his ship possessed capabilities that even he had not fully understood until this moment, when humanity's survival depended on technologies that pushed the boundaries of known science. Admiral Crixvell activated emergency combat protocols that had not been used since the Dominion's war against the ancient Corvani Empire 2 centuries ago. His remaining fleet commanders received orders to implement maximum firepower concentration tactics while his flagship's crew prepared for desperate measures that might salvage victory from what was rapidly becoming an unprecedented disaster. The Liberty's drone swarms had spread throughout the battlefield like a mechanical plague, each autonomous unit demonstrating combat intelligence that surpassed anything the Zephyrian tactical computers could analyze. These small vessels moved With perfect coordination, while adapting their attack patterns faster than alien commanders could issue defensive orders to their crews, Captain Morrison watched his tactical displays with growing amazement as he realized that humanity had built weapon systems even more advanced than their own designers had fully understood. Chief Engineer Lisa Parker was activating experimental technologies that had been installed aboard the Liberty during its final construction phase, systems that human scientists had developed in theoretical isolation, without knowing whether they would actually function in combat. Sub-Commander Yithkal reported that the drone swarms were demonstrating technological capabilities that exceeded those of the parent vessel by several orders of magnitude. Each small craft appeared to possess its own gravity manipulation system, antimatter power source, and artificial intelligence network that allowed them to function as a collective organism rather than individual machines. The Zephyrian cruiser Eternal Song attempted to destroy a cluster of attacking drones using a plasma burst that should have vaporized anything within a 10-kilometer radius. Instead, the mechanical units simply disappeared from normal space for the duration of the energy discharge before reappearing to continue their assault with weapons that punched through crystalline hulls like needles through fabric. Admiral Crix Vell realized that his fleet was facing an enemy that possessed technologies the Galactic Dominion had never encountered during 3 centuries of expansion across the galaxy. The human weapons seemed to operate according to physics, principles that violated fundamental laws the Dominion scientists considered absolutely universal. Lieutenant Amy Brooks initiated the Liberty's experimental gravity manipulation systems under direct orders from Captain Morrison, who had decided that humanity's survival justified using technologies that might prove as dangerous to his own ship as to the enemy. The results exceeded every theoretical prediction that human scientists had made during years of careful development. The USS Liberty began moving through space in ways that should have been impossible for any vessel constructed from normal matter. The ship changed direction without decelerating, accelerated without apparent reaction mass, and maintained structural integrity, while performing maneuvers that should have torn apart anything built using conventional engineering techniques. Chief Science Officer Vex Neela watched his instruments record impossible readings as the human vessel demonstrated mastery of gravitational forces that the most advanced species in the galaxy had been unable to achieve. The Liberty was treating space-time itself as a navigational medium, bending reality around its hull while maintaining perfect weapons accuracy during maneuvers that would have been fatal to any other crew. The Zephyrian battlecruiser Star's Edge attempted to ram the human ship, hoping that physical collision would succeed where energy weapons had failed. Captain Morrison ordered evasive action that demonstrated why human engineers had spent 50 years developing gravity control systems that their own physicists had initially declared theoretically impossible. The Liberty slipped sideways through dimensions that normal sensors could not detect, allowing the alien vessel to pass harmlessly through space the human ship had occupied just moments before. The Zephyrian crew found themselves attacking empty space while their target reappeared behind them to deliver a devastating barrage of railgun fire that reduced their ship to expanding debris. Admiral Harrison coordinated the defense of Earth's orbital installations from his command center on Luna Base, watching as human forces that had been expected to last perhaps an hour against superior alien technology were systematically destroying an enemy fleet that had never experienced defeat. The tactical situation was evolving beyond every scenario that Earth's military planners had considered possible. Dr. Sandra Hayes analyzed combat data streaming from the Liberty's sensor arrays, discovering that human weapons were producing effects that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality itself. The ship's antimatter warheads were creating spatial distortions that affected enemy vessels across distances that should have been impossible, according to known physics. The drone swarms began coordinating attacks with the Liberty's main weapons systems, creating a level of tactical integration that suggested the small craft were actually extensions of the larger vessel's consciousness, rather than independent machines. This realization sent shockwaves through the Zephyrian command structure as they began to understand that they were fighting a single organism with hundreds of separate bodies. Lieutenant Rodriguez reported that alien communication frequencies were carrying increasingly desperate calls for reinforcement from throughout the Dominion's local sector. Admiral Crix Vell was apparently requesting immediate assistance from every available fleet, describing human capabilities in terms that his superiors were having difficulty accepting as accurate, rather than the delusions of a commander suffering from combat stress. The Liberty's point defense systems had evolved beyond simple interception of incoming weapons to active suppression of enemy targeting systems. Human laser batteries were somehow interfering with Zephyrian quantum sensors at ranges that exceeded the theoretical maximum for coherent energy transmission, making it impossible for alien gunners to achieve accurate firing solutions. Captain Morrison realized that his ship was demonstrating capabilities that even its own design team had not fully understood when they installed systems developed by research programs that had been classified beyond his security clearance. The Liberty was apparently the end product of decades of theoretical work by human scientists who had been preparing for exactly this type of encounter. Chief Engineer Parker reported that the ship's fusion reactors were operating at energy levels that should have been impossible to contain using any known materials. Yet the Liberty's power systems continued to function within acceptable parameters while supplying energy demands that exceeded the output of small stars. Admiral Crix Vell watched his fleet strength decrease toward levels that would soon make organized resistance impossible. The human vessel was destroying Zephyrian ships faster than his remaining commanders could coordinate defensive maneuvers, while those drone swarms continued to multiply, as if the Liberty possessed unlimited manufacturing capacity. The Zephyrian flagship Crystal Throne attempted to escape the battle by activating quantum jump drives that should have carried the ship across interstellar distances faster than any pursuing enemy could follow. Instead, the vessel found itself trapped within a gravity well that the human ship was apparently generating around the entire battlefield. Dr. Karen Phillips monitored medical facilities throughout the human fleet, amazed to discover that casualties remained remarkably light despite the intensity of combat operations. The Liberty's defensive capabilities were somehow protecting Allied vessels across distances that should have required separate shielding systems for each protected ship. Lieutenant Amy Brooks reported that enemy fleet cohesion was collapsing as individual Zephyrian commanders began attempting independent retreat maneuvers. The alien tactical coordination that had conquered 47 different species was breaking down under assault from weapons and strategies that their military doctrine had never contemplated. The Liberty's artificial intelligence systems began demonstrating autonomous decision-making capabilities that exceeded their original programming parameters. The ship was apparently learning and adapting during combat operations, developing new tactical responses faster than human crew members could analyze the changing battlefield situation. Admiral Crix Vell found himself facing the complete destruction of a fleet that had been considered invincible by every species in the galaxy. His tactical computers were reporting weapon effects and defensive failures that violated fundamental assumptions about technology and physics that had guided Dominion military development for centuries. The battle was entering its second hour with the Zephyrian fleet reduced to less than 30% of its original strength, while the human vessel continued to demonstrate capabilities that seemed to expand rather than diminish as combat operations continued. Admiral Crix Vell made the decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life, assuming he survived the next few minutes of what had become the most disastrous battle in Galactic Dominion history. His flagship Crystal Throne would ram the human vessel directly, using the massive bulk of an 8-kilometer command ship to destroy an enemy that conventional weapons could not touch. The Zephyrian admiral's desperate gambit represented the last hope for salvaging some measure of victory from a battle that had already cost him more ships than the Dominion had lost during the previous century of conquest. His crew prepared for ramming speed while emergency systems sealed bulkheads and activated crash protection protocols that had never been tested under actual combat conditions. Captain Morrison watched the approaching alien flagship with calm determination, knowing that his next decision would determine whether humanity survived as a free species or joined the growing list of worlds that served under Dominion rule. Dr. Karen Phillips monitored the ship's medical facilities while reporting directly to the bridge about authorization codes that had been sealed since the Liberty's commissioning. The authorization codes unlocked humanity's most terrifying weapon, something that Earth's military leadership had hoped would never be used except in the most desperate circumstances imaginable. Lieutenant Amy Brooks received firing permission for antimatter warheads that represented the absolute pinnacle of human weapons technology. Chief Engineer Lisa Parker initiated launch sequences for missiles that carried enough destructive power to sterilize entire continents, weapons that human scientists had developed as a final deterrent against exactly the kind of overwhelming force that the Galactic Dominion represented. The Liberty's antimatter production systems had been manufacturing warheads throughout the battle, creating weapons that treated the most dangerous force in the universe as standard ammunition. The antimatter missile launched from the Liberty's primary weapons bay moved slowly compared to the railgun projectiles that had been devastating the Zephyrian fleet, but its target was so large and close that evasive maneuvers were impossible. Admiral Crixvell watched the approaching weapon with the fascination of someone witnessing his own execution. Sub-Commander Yith Cole detected energy signatures that his instruments insisted were impossible as the human warhead approached the Crystal Throne's forward section. The missile contained enough antimatter to power a small city for decades, but these primitives were using it as a tactical weapon against a single enemy vessel. The antimatter detonation created a miniature star that could be seen from Earth's surface, generating temperatures and pressures that existed nowhere else in the galaxy, except in the cores of massive stars. The Crystal Throne's forward half simply ceased to exist as matter and antimatter annihilated each other in a reaction that released more energy than most species used during entire planetary bombardments. Admiral Crixvell found himself aboard a ship that had been reduced to half its original size in the space of a single heartbeat, watching as 6 nearby vessels were vaporized by the explosion, while 12 others suffered critical damage from radiation that penetrated their quantum shields as if they were constructed from tissue paper. Lieutenant Rodriguez coordinated damage assessment reports from throughout the Zephyrian fleet, while maintaining communication links with Admiral Harrison's command center on Luna Base. The antimatter detonation had effectively ended organized alien resistance, reducing a fleet that had conquered 47 worlds to a collection of damaged vessels attempting desperate escape maneuvers. The remaining Zephyrian ships tried to flee the battlefield using quantum jump drives that should have carried them to safety across interstellar distances, but Chief Engineer Parker had been tracking their quantum signatures throughout the battle. The Liberty's sensor arrays could apparently follow enemy vessels across light years, with accuracy that made escape impossible. Dr. Sandra Hayes analyzed sensor data from the antimatter explosion, discovering that human weapons were producing effects that extended far beyond simple matter-energy conversion. The detonation had created spatial distortions that affected the fundamental structure of space-time itself, generating secondary effects that damaged enemy vessels through mechanisms that violated known physics. Captain Morrison ordered pursuit of the fleeing alien vessels, activating the Liberty's experimental jump drive systems for the first time under combat conditions. The ship disappeared from normal space before reappearing directly in the path of escaping Zephyrian cruisers, demonstrating faster-than-light capabilities that exceeded anything the Galactic Dominion possessed. The Liberty's drone swarms had apparently followed their parent vessel through hyperspace, emerging to continue their systematic destruction of enemy ships that had thought themselves safely beyond human weapons range. The mechanical units demonstrated the same impossible mobility as the larger vessel, treating interstellar distances as minor inconveniences rather than absolute barriers. Admiral Crixvell realized that his surviving ships were trapped by an enemy that could pursue them anywhere in the galaxy, while maintaining weapons accuracy that made escape impossible. The humans had demonstrated technological mastery that exceeded the capabilities of the most advanced species the Dominion had ever encountered. Chief Science Officer Vex Neela reported that the human vessel was somehow tracking Zephyrian ships through quantum signatures that should have been undetectable across interstellar distances. The Liberty's sensors were apparently operating according to principles that allowed them to monitor enemy movements, regardless of distance or attempted concealment. The final Zephyrian resistance collapsed as the last escort cruisers surrendered, rather than face destruction by weapons that treated the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolute constraints. Lieutenant Amy Brooks coordinated ceasefire procedures while maintaining target locks on enemy vessels that had ceased offensive operations. Admiral Harrison received surrender offers from Zephyrian commanders throughout the solar system as news of their fleet's destruction spread through alien communication networks. The tactical situation had reversed completely, with humanity in the position of dictating terms to an enemy that had expected easy conquest. Dr. Karen Phillips reported minimal human casualties despite the intensity of combat operations, while Chief Engineer Parker confirmed that the Liberty systems remained operational at nearly full capacity. The ship had apparently been designed to fight extended campaigns against multiple enemy fleets rather than single engagement battles. Lieutenant Rodriguez established communication links with the surviving Zephyrian vessels, transmitting surrender, terms that Admiral Harrison had prepared for the unlikely event that human forces actually achieved tactical superiority. The aliens were being offered the same choice they had given humanity: immediate surrender or complete destruction. Captain Morrison walked through the Liberty's corridors, speaking with crew members who had just participated in the most important battle in human history. Their victory had been achieved using technologies that pushed the boundaries of known science, but the cost of developing such weapons had required decades of research by Earth's most brilliant scientists. The Zephyrian fleet that had conquered 47 worlds in 3 centuries had been reduced to scattered survivors begging for mercy from a species they had dismissed as primitive barbarians. Admiral Crixvell found himself preparing a surrender message that would shock the Galactic Dominion's leadership more than any military defeat in their recorded history. The Liberty's artificial intelligence systems began analyzing captured alien technology while coordinating repair operations for damaged human vessels. The ship was apparently capable of reverse engineering Zephyrian equipment faster than the aliens themselves could develop new defensive countermeasures. The battle that was supposed to conclude with humanity's surrender had ended with the complete destruction of an invasion fleet that represented the concentrated military power of dozens of alien species. Earth had announced itself to the galaxy as a force to be respected rather than a civilization to be conquered. Admiral Crixvell's emergency transmission to the Galactic Dominion Council carried across interstellar space with the urgency of a species facing its first military defeat in over 3 centuries of conquest. His report described human capabilities in terms that would fundamentally alter how every advanced civilization in the galaxy viewed the small blue planet, orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, the surviving Zephyrian. Commander's voice shook with emotions that his species rarely experienced, as he explained how a single human vessel had destroyed 2/3 of his fleet using weapons that violated every known principle of physics and military tactics. The humans had treated antimatter as conventional ammunition, manipulated gravity as if it were a simple tool, and demonstrated artificial intelligence capabilities that exceeded anything in the Dominion's technological archives. Sub-Commander Yithkal worked frantically to compile technical data that might help other Dominion fleets avoid the catastrophic defeat his forces had suffered. The sensor recording showed human weapons generating kinetic energies equivalent to stellar collisions while their defensive systems ignored plasma beams that had reduced mountain ranges to glowing vapor on dozens of conquered worlds. Captain Morrison received priority communications from Admiral Harrison confirming that the alien surrender had been accepted according to protocols established by Earth's unified government. The surviving Zephyrian vessels would be escorted to Luna Base for detailed technical analysis while their crews underwent questioning, designed to provide intelligence about the broader galactic political situation. The USS Liberty's victory had implications that extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation in Earth's solar system. Lieutenant Amy Brooks monitored communication intercepts, showing that news of the battle was spreading throughout the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds, carried by quantum communication networks that connected every major civilization within thousands of light years. Dr. Sandra Hayes analyzed the flood of intelligence, data provided by captured alien equipment and voluntary testimony from Zephyrian prisoners who seemed eager to cooperate with their captors. The Galactic Dominion controlled approximately 1,200 star systems while maintaining tributary relationships with thousands of less advanced species that provided resources and labor in exchange for protection from other galactic powers. The political structure that governed this vast interstellar empire was far more complex than humanity had imagined during their first contact with alien civilization. The Dominion consisted of multiple species that had achieved technological parity through centuries of cooperation, but their expansion had been driven primarily by the military superiority of Zephyrian fleets that had never experienced defeat in battle. Admiral Harrison coordinated humanity's response to diplomatic contacts from dozens of alien governments that had monitored the battle through long-range sensors and communication intercepts. Species that had been considering resistance to Dominion expansion suddenly found themselves dealing with a new player in galactic politics that had demonstrated overwhelming military capabilities. Chief Engineer Lisa Parker supervised technical analysis teams that were reverse engineering captured Zephyrian technology while comparing alien systems to the experimental devices installed aboard the Liberty. The human ship incorporated theoretical principles that even advanced galactic civilizations had not successfully implemented, suggesting that Earth's scientists had achieved breakthroughs that placed humanity at the technological forefront of known space. The implications of human weapons technology were causing panic throughout the Galactic Dominion's leadership, as reports from Admiral Crixvell were analyzed by scientists who could not explain how a supposedly primitive species had developed antimatter warheads, gravity manipulation systems, and artificial intelligence networks that exceeded Dominion capabilities by orders of magnitude. Lieutenant Rodriguez established communication protocols with alien governments that were requesting immediate diplomatic contact with Earth's leadership. These civilizations had spent centuries under Dominion rule or tributary status, but humanity's demonstration of superior military power was inspiring independence movements that had been dormant for generations. Captain Morrison found himself at the center of a political revolution that extended across thousands of star systems as news of humanity's victory reached civilizations that had never imagined successful resistance to Dominion control was possible. The Liberty had become a symbol of hope for species that had accepted alien domination as an unchangeable fact of galactic life. Dr. Karen Phillips coordinated medical treatment for Zephyrian prisoners while analyzing alien physiology that provided insights into the biological diversity of galactic civilization. The captured aliens represented just one species among dozens that comprised the Dominion's political structure, suggesting that humanity would soon be dealing with a complex web of interstellar relationships. The Galactic Dominion's response to their military defeat was swift and decisive, with fleets throughout their territory receiving orders to avoid human space while political leaders attempted to understand how their most experienced military commander had been defeated by a single enemy vessel. Admiral Crixvell's reputation for invincibility had been shattered, along with his fleet. Chief Science Officer Vex Neela provided technical testimony that helped human scientists understand the broader implications of their technological achievements. The Liberty's weapons systems incorporated principles that the most advanced galactic civilizations had been unable to master, placing Earth in a position of technological superiority that could reshape the balance of power throughout known space. Admiral Harrison received formal diplomatic recognition from the Galactic Council, a political body that represented over 50 different species and had been attempting to limit Dominion expansion for centuries without success. Humanity's military victory had accomplished what decades of political maneuvering and economic pressure had failed to achieve. The Liberty's artificial intelligence systems began coordinating with similar networks aboard other human vessels, creating a communication web that could monitor alien activities across interstellar distances while maintaining security protocols that prevented enemy infiltration. The ship's AI had apparently evolved beyond its original programming during combat operations. Lieutenant Amy Brooks analyzed strategic intelligence showing that Dominion fleets throughout the galaxy were retreating from expansion activities while their political leadership attempted to negotiate some form of accommodation with the new human threat. Species that had been marked for conquest were suddenly finding themselves free from immediate danger. Captain Morrison realized that humanity had transitioned from potential victims to apex predators in the space of a single battle, but this new status carried responsibilities that Earth's leadership was still learning to understand. The galaxy was filled with civilizations that would either seek human protection or alliance, while others would undoubtedly view humanity as a threat to be eliminated. Dr. Sandra Hayes published preliminary reports about galactic civilization that revealed a complex political environment where technological advancement did not necessarily correlate with military dominance or political influence. Humanity's unique approach to weapons development had given them advantages that more advanced species had been unable to achieve. The Liberty's sensor arrays detected massive quantum signatures throughout the galaxy as alien fleets changed course away from human space, while diplomatic vessels began approaching Earth's solar system. The age of human isolation had ended permanently, replaced by a new era where Earth's inhabitants would play a central role in galactic politics. The final irony of the situation was not lost on Captain Morrison as he reviewed after action, reports showing that the Liberty had used less than 30% of its actual combat capability during the battle. Human engineers had built a warship that exceeded even their own understanding of what they had created, producing a vessel capable of challenging the combined military might of the entire galaxy if necessary. The stars that had once seemed so distant and mysterious now represented a frontier that humanity would explore, not as refugees or supplicants, but as the newest and most formidable power in a galaxy that had just learned to fear the ingenuity and determination of the species. From the small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star,